Linda, and I am so excited to introduce you today to Jane Rutter. And Jane and I were just chatting a little bit before we went live, and I said, I feel like we've lived identical lives practically because it's very rare that I run into someone who was a professional fundraiser like I was and still am, but also passionate about writing and especially her spiritual writing. So both she and I have, in fact, ironically, we've both written books about stewardship in the church. So we combined our spiritual interests with our fundraising interests, I think, in that those books. And I'm sure she'll tell you more about them. But I'm kind of curious to see your path, Jane, to writing. And I have a feeling it's going to be similar to mine, but what got you interested in writing?
I have to tell you that I have written all my life. So I remember as a child writing poems, and the only poem I can remember had something to do with sitting around at campfires and fairies dancing around the campfire. Now, somehow I've lost that poem, but I do remember that. And that so I have always, I think, had that little bit of introspection and love of writing and the word, and can't remember a time that I haven't written.
Well, we really are on the same path. I didn't write poetry. I wrote short stories when I was about 10. I started writing short stories and I thought someday I'm going to write a book. And now I've had about 40 published. So
Oh my
I
gosh.
lived the dream. But when you mentioned fairies, that was quite intriguing to me because one of my guests who I had on is a shamanistic practitioner. And she also has written several books about fairies, and she's going to come on and talk to us about spiritualism of fairies. So you'll probably
Oh
be
my
very
gosh.
interested in tuning in to Jill's talk when it airs. But so,
Fabulous.
what kind of writing are you focused on now mostly? Obviously, you're not doing poetry, I don't think, but maybe you are.
No, not much poetry anymore. Really, in in my career, during my career, I wrote grants and I owned my own grant writing company. So I was very much focused on writing for as a profession. And then in 2001, I joined the Catholic diocese in my community and as the development stewardship director and went to the editor of the weekly newspaper and said, you know, Jay, I'd like to write a column. And he said, okay. And he posted the first column. And I said, I'm going to write it every week. He said, what? I said, oh, yeah. And that column was called Joyful Steward. So I went around our 120 some parishes and I interviewed people who gave back to the church in ways. And that was just a column that I wrote for many years that then finally melded into a column that I called On the Spiritual Journey. And I wrote that weekly for years for the and very much um, helping people find God in their daily lives. And that's really, I think that is my forte. So I continue 10 years after I went on to a second um, job, I continued that column, and now I call it Continuing the Spiritual Journey. And that is in our weekly newspaper here. It had been in our local, newspapers are a thing of the past, the written word. So it's in a local newspaper. It used to be in three, but and then I posted as well, put it on other sites.
That's great, and
So very much a columnist.
I have really enjoyed your readings. I get very inspired when I read them, but
Thank you.
I guess the big question is what inspires you? What I mean, writing a weekly column is a lot of you need inspiration. It's not just hard work, but you need the inspiration to do it. So tell us what inspires you. I think I know the answer, but I want to hear it from you.
Linda, if you do, I'm not sure I know the answer because there's many a day. There's many a day. I've set my deadline as Friday. That's my internal clock deadline. And there is many a week where Friday morning I have the opening line or the thought or the title, and I have no idea where it's going to go. So it's very much asking God to guide it. But I think I have a lot of introspection, or maybe maybe it's not introspection. Maybe I just watch what's going on with people. And honestly, I think people inspire me and looking at them and seeing what good you want to come and the path that we're following and really thinking about our whole goal is eternal life. And the book that we might talk about this later, the book that I've got, the manuscript that I have, I'm looking for publishers, as it were, is very much about going from the temporal to the eternal and living for the eternal. And I think that's very esoteric, but that really is what each step of that journey, I think, is what I try to pick up in that daily or that weekly column. So it's really what's going on in my life in that moment and where just something speaks to me. And it never ends the way I thought it was going to end. It starts out with a thought, and who knows, God helps me guide it by deadline. And I'm sure you have that same experience, would
I,
be
I
my
think
guess.
I think I just recently, in fact, I believe it was this morning, it may have been in the Pope's reflection or something that I saw, like our God is a God of surprises, and you just
That's
confirmed that.
that's that's exactly right. Okay, where are we taking this, Lord?
I know sometimes I do the same thing. I start out with an idea and this isn't what I thought I was going to start out with, but it's what it ended up with.
Well, and there are times your ideas go nowhere. So I have Word documents that are a few paragraphs and they've never been developed. Someday they might.
Well, there's always tomorrow.
That's right. That's right.
I don't know if you share this experience, but for me, the one of the difficult things about being a writer is you have no idea who's reading your book and what they're thinking about it unless
Mhm.
they contact you, which most people don't. But
Right.
occasionally I know I get my joy from when the books I've written about fundraising, I'll run into someone at an association of fundraising professionals chapter or something, and I think, and somebody will come up and say, "Oh, I love your book. I have it all dog-eared and highlighted and underlined, and
Wonderful.
it was like my Bible." And I thought, "Oh my gosh, that really makes you feel good." So I think when you have experiences like that, those experiences bring you joy. But what really brings you joy about writing or about anything in your life?
I think the number one thing in writing is you've told me you have 6 kids. I have 3, and then I have grandchildren also and family. And what brings me joy is knowing that they read my column because my goal is really to bring them to God. Not that they aren't, but to carry that faith as family and community. And that truly does bring me joy. For example, a couple of columns ago, my daughter, it was a Friday morning, and I'm at the computer, so the grandkids can't come down to grandma's, right? They live up the hill from us. And so Laura calls and asks me just where I am on this. I said, Laura, I'm still at one sentence. I've got the opening sentence. I'm going nowhere. So the next thing I know, she emails me 2 paragraphs that are beautiful. And she asked me to send her the sentence. And she said, this is what spoke to me. And that column wrote itself in an hour because I incorporated that. That brings me joy is that I know that I touched someone. So I think you do get, you're a writer, you want an audience, or why publish it? Um, and I don't think it's ego based. It's really just that joy of connecting. And yeah, so very much connecting with people.
For me, the word I always use is that I began writing because I wanted to leave a legacy, first of all, for my profession when I was writing all books about the nonprofit world, but then also a legacy for my family. And I think I really think we must be sisters from a different mother or something. I don't know. Or maybe you're my daughter. You're probably more my daughter's age than a younger sister, but that I never had. But I'm really excited to hear what you're working on now. You alluded to the fact that you are working on another book, I believe, right? In addition to your column.
Yeah. I have a book, a manuscript that I've just sent to, I don't know, publisher 7 maybe. So it hasn't been accepted anywhere yet, but I'll just keep trudging along here. Called The Women of Spirit, Claiming Our Ultimate Power. And, the whole book is, as I said, is I created two models, a temporal model and an eternal model of how the world works, as it were, versus the eternal model of spirituality. And so it's the temporal model of success, the eternal model of spirituality. And it's really helping women in business. I started a business and joined the Chamber of Commerce and did all those things without a clue as to what I was doing. There was no business training. I just went at it, which is pretty much how I live, right? Just go for the adventure. And so the things I learned along the way, how to succeed. But what I found is I don't want the worldly stuff. And we bump against it so much and think we're living for that success. So Women of Spirit really addresses how we can succeed in the temporal model in the sense of living in the world. We live in it. But how we do that focused on salvation and God and life everlasting, how we dwell in God and succeed. And it's really a call for women. It's really a book on evangelization. It could be a Bible study or but it's my job on that road.
Sounds really exciting. And you and I will have to talk more about publishing because I've been the road of traditional publisher, self-publishing, and hybrid publishing. So,
Right. And I've done both as well. Yeah.
oh, okay. So you've had some
Yeah.
experience in that arena as well. If someone wants to access your work, your columns, maybe they're not in your region, so they don't get the newspaper, but how can they access your books, your column, any work that you are working on now?
I have to tell you that I'm not big on all the social media. So at some point, I may have to be, but I am on LinkedIn. So Jane Rutter on LinkedIn. And then I also send my column out. I have quite a few followers and I send it out through a mailing service. So they can just email me at janerutter@centurylink.net. And Rutter is like butter with an R. So it's Rutter, Jane Rutter at centurylink.net. And just let me know you'd like to receive it and you'll get it right away.
Great. We'll be giving you all these, you'll see the links to all these, her LinkedIn and her email address. And I highly recommend that you subscribe to her weekly column because I find a lot of inspiration in it myself. And as I read through it, I occasionally forward it to some people that I think would really benefit from it. I have a lot of friends in Nevada who probably don't have any access to reading Jane's work, but I think once you get it and really see the value in it and the inspiration that lies behind all this, you'll want to forward it to a lot of your friends too, as well.
And what I'm hoping is that when people forward it to their friends and their friends say yes, then they'll forward those emails to me so I can add them to my list of people I send it to.
Yes.
So that would be a joy for me.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So, what is really your goal with your writing? I know you've talked a lot about the inspiration behind this, but what keeps you plugging away at writing? And I know as a writer myself, it's not an easy task. I'm working on 3 books right now, plus helping a former pastor get his first book published. So I know it's a lot of work involved in it, but I still feel inspired by doing it. So I want to know what inspires you and gives you hope that, that you want to, is there something you want to accomplish with your writing that maybe you feel you still haven't accomplished yet?
Well, I would say I would like it to go big. I mean, I'm just going to admit that up front because I want the readership. I want people to embrace it. And but I think what my real goal is, number one, I can't imagine not writing think it's part of how I think. And I think it is truly using the gifts that God gave me. So I see it as a way to give back. Um, and I know people read it, and I know, I have people who tell me, a lot of people who tell me they appreciate it. And so I think it's just reaching people. I think my goal is just to reach as many people as I can to open their hearts to God. Because I'm a joyful person, and I want that joy to spread. Maybe that's really what it is, Linda. It's just spreading joy and hope.
That is a great goal. I don't think you could have anything greater than that as your goal in life,
Yeah,
spread joy to others.
yeah,
Because I mean, we depend so much on each other. And to me, it's amazing how, I mean, I moved here to Missouri from Nevada. Originally, it was from Pennsylvania. And I thought, oh my gosh, I have to leave my parish. I have to leave my friends. And
yeah.
where am I going to find people like that? And it's been
Mhm.
amazing to me how I found a parish that was absolutely perfect for me. And I found so many friends, and I found Jane, especially as one of those. We haven't ever met in person, but we're going to for sure. And it's just so inspiring to me that no matter where you are, if your heart is open, you're going to find the right people to bring you to God. And Jane is one of them. As I said, I would definitely advise you to subscribe to her list and to pass it on to your friends and pass their names along to her. So other than names, is there anything else that you think you need to help further your work? What could we do for you, myself or the listeners?
I think the big thing is that it's going to take full time, isn't it, just to try to find other avenues for publishing. So any help any reader wants to give me in giving me avenues, or, I always think the only way to be successful is to have a name, someone who has name recognition and will help promote your book. And that's few and far between to find people who have that. I mean, my books have been, the first book I published was The Self-Sustaining Nonprofit, which
Oh,
was pretty exciting.
very
And that
impressive.
particular book was to teach people like myself how to start a business and make it successful. And it was based on my complete inexperience. And that's pretty neat. So I had all the people in the state who were in those business arenas, SBA director, who promoted that, and they're in the book as far as speaking for the book. So I think that's part of what I need. I need a little bit of that publicity. Does that make sense?
It does.
And obviously, at some point, I'm going to have to figure out how to get more online, which is not really up my alley,
Yeah,
so to
it's not
say.
my favorite thing either, but
Yeah.
tell us about your other book, all your publications, because there's quite a list of them here, but I think people might be interested in checking out some of your books and where they can find them, I assume they're all on Amazon probably.
Well, really, the only two books that I've got currently, because I used to self-publish through my business Grants Link. I published a series of corporate funding books for
Oh,
different states. But those are really, they're not anything that would be up to date at this point.
mhm.
The other book I have is of course, oh gosh, it's right here, Seasons of the Spirit. And that I think is where you found me through Liturgical Press, through
I
a
think
publication that they do,
I,
I
I
think.
forget how we found each other.
Okay.
I think I might have found you
But
in the diocese that you used to work for. I think I looked and I somehow got in touch
okay.
with somebody and they said, "Oh, she's not here." And I was trying to get in touch with
Uh,
you and they said, "She's not here anymore."
okay. But I have Seasons of the Spirit, and that book is a compilation of the columns that I wrote while I was at the Diocese of Jefferson City. And that's just liturgicalpress.org. So they have it, you can go right online and buy that. And then the self-sustaining nonprofit is one that I self-published when I had my business. So that is something that I can directly provide to people.
And then it says you were also an editor on Gospel Gift and Gratitude. That sounds
Yeah,
very
that was
intriguing.
an initiative. That was an initiative in our diocese, and as director of stewardship, we wrote some curriculum for the schools, the Catholic schools, K through 12, and then wrote a really gospel gift and gratitude was a way to organize the parish as part of the parish council. And it was really a stewardship book on time, talent, and treasure. But that those three T's you hear about in church are, people always think, okay, I have to tithe. And it seems to be more about the tithing oftentimes in people's mind than the time and talent. So what I kind of changed that to is gospel gift and gratitude and
Hmm.
how we give back and how what we hear and how we live our lives. And it's really the structure that we adopted in our diocese, gospel gift and gratitude, with our former bishop.
Is that book available to anyone that might be interested in it for their diocese?
I think it should be.
Is
It
that
should
also
be.
through Liturgical Press?
Um, I think we published that in the diocese itself.
Oh, okay.
So that was an internal
Okay.
publication that then we would send out to people. And I know I still have it in PDF form, and I've had the
Oh,
bishop's permission to give it to people. So it's
oh,
something that can be gifted,
oh, that's
frankly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the reason that I think I was interested in talking to you in the first place was about that book because I wrote The Pastor's Guide to Stewardship and Philanthropy, which talks a
Okay.
lot about time, talent, and treasure. In fact, the cover of
Yeah.
it is the a depiction of the buried talents that that people sometimes do. So
Sure.
I think we have
Sure.
so much in common with, but I think, your books and Jane is also an award-winning writer, as she mentioned. So I think it's definitely worthwhile to look for her books if you can get them, and if there's anything else that you're interested in. I certainly want to make sure that you have Jane's information and you can get in touch with her. But are there any final words you have, maybe to aspiring writers, since you have done so much writing? And some people think, oh, everybody tells me I should write a book, but I don't know where to start. What advice would you give to some aspiring writers?
I think that I think there's first of all, don't give up. When I looked back this morning, I have a whole suitcase or a attaché case that's just filled with old books, notebooks. And I have always kept a notebook in my purse. So when an idea captures me, I just write it down at the moment. Um, and some just stay there, right? So I have all these notebooks, but you don't give up. Just capture the ideas when you get them, and then just write whatever comes to mind. Just let it unfold. Don't worry about what you're going to do with it. Just stay true to who you are and what you want to say, the story you have to relate, the point you want to make. Don't worry about whether it's good or not. Don't get caught up in editing while you write, which just kills as we all know as writers, just kills the spark right there. Um, and I think just pray that your voice, that God is guiding you in your writing. Make it your voice. And if it's a voice in pain or a voice in a moment of joy or a voice in a moment of wonder or inquisition, let that flow. Be real. Don't try to sugar it up. Just be real with what you're feeling and write that. The good books that we read, whatever we read, the good poetry, anything, stories that we read are stories that are real. So they have to have that emotion that they've got to move me. And of course, that's something we can talk about in planned giving and fundraising, can't we, Linda?
Right. I had one other question. I was wondering if you ever missed your career in fundraising? Are you happier as a writer?
Well, I have to tell you that I retired just fundraising from the diocese. I went to a fundraising firm, a national firm,
Mhm.
and and I just retired the end of December of 22, and I'm already doing a gig for them. And of course, I just raised $1 million for our parish. So yeah, it never quits. Once people know you raise money for a living and you like to do it, which nobody does, evidently, they uh they seek you out and you don't stop.
Apparently
You just
not.
don't get paid for it.
Well, found it interesting that you and I both wrote books about stewardship because I think every pastor I've ever had, I remember one of my pastors came out one day after the gospel to read his homily, and he said, I have to talk to you about the one thing priests hate to talk about. And I said, money. I knew exactly what it was going to
Yeah,
be because
yeah,
I think it's very true. A lot of clergy
yeah.
people find that probably the most painful part of their ministry is talking about that nasty subject of money, but it's not nasty. It's really the joy of philanthropy is almost as exciting as
Yes.
the joy of writing for me, and I think it is for you too, probably.
Yeah.
So you're still involved, I'm sure, as
Oh, yeah, I'm still involved. And the wonderful thing that we can kind of think about this, and I'm sure this is someone you've read. You've read The Spirituality of Fundraising by Father Henry
Henry
Nouwen.
Nouwen. Yes.
Okay, so there is someone who really helps people understand what it means to give generously out of the heart. Um, so I think I think a lot, I don't think pastors are necessarily taught that or in any denomination. They're
No,
taught about, yeah,
I have talked to priests, rabbis, ministers, imams, and none of them are ever seem to be taught much about that aspect of their ministry until it's time to jump in and do it. But I think many and most of the ones I've talked to really approach it as you and I do, that it's a gift from God and that everything we have belongs to God anyway. So
right.
why not give back some portion of that to God?
Yeah,
And I think that in itself is very joyful. And there is joyful
exactly.
giving. I quote Henri Nouwen in my book. In fact, the book I wrote on stewardship because and it's a very short book. I highly recommend that book, even though he's not my guest. But that's also another good book that you might want to read. Are there
Okay.
any final thoughts that you would like to share with us before we close?
I I do think it's important for all of us in our lives to I think I've always had a sense of success, of wanting to succeed. I want to be the A person. I don't want to be the F student or the F this or just drudge through every day. I moved my entire life, every 3 years of our life growing up in
Oh,
different countries, 4 different countries,
oh,
3 different states in the United States. So I understand the sense of adventure, but the sadness of leaving something and the fear of going to something new and then trying to fit in. So it's a whole, I never had a community other than my family, which I think is why church and God were, I never doubted. That's what carried me. So I think it's very important for us to look at where we are and succeed where we are, not to be afraid, just to move forward and realize you're going for the eternal. Just go for the A team.
great. I think you've inspired perhaps some budding writers who maybe have had a book in the back of their mind but never thought they could do it. And I think you've inspired, and to me,
I
that's
hope
very
so.
exciting that I can inspire someone else to write also. So since I helped a friend of mine put together a collection of poetry, even though poetry wasn't my thing, but she had written poetry for a long time, and I helped her put together her book of poetry. And as I said, I'm now helping a friend put together his first published book. So it's really exciting to see that other people get inspired by you, I'm sure. So
Thank you.
I know I certainly was inspired by you. So I want to thank you for your time with us and wish you much success in your latest book. I can't wait to get my hands on it. I know everybody else. And I hope everybody who's listening to us wants to purchase that book. So we will I'll keep them in touch. I do also have a spiritual website, and it's mostly about my books, but I'm going to start covering some things from other writers that I know, like Jane, and I will let you know when that's available on my website as well. So,
Well, Linda, you are very inspiring. I mean, you're amazing. 40 books and all the work that you do to teach people. It's just amazing. So God bless you.
well, and you too. And thanks so much. And we'll look forward to seeing everyone in our next podcast. And I have a feeling we're going to have Jane back again, maybe when her new book
That
comes
would be delightful.
out. Okay. Thanks, Jane.
Thank you. God bless.